humanity in my research has been intentionally conditioned to be self-interested, apathetic, immature, indoctrinated to be compliant consumers. Like that's just foundational. So, when you share, how do we move out of these spaces? Hey, it's hard. If you've never been to the gym and someone's like, hey, come to the gym, we're going to pump weights, your muscles are going to be so sore. And maybe when you go there, you're going to go, I'm a grown man, I can barely bench 50 kilos. What's going on? My mate's doing 150. But, well, your mate's been bench pressing for 15 years. So that's the reason he or her has built up their capacity to deal with more. And the human psyche is the same. We can nurture, we can build, we can expand the human psyche to deal with more. But ironically, when it's the human psyche, there might be more going on in the external world, but we're actually dealing with it better. We're more efficient. The efficiency is what we're mastering. Yeah, the human psyche is just beautiful. It's one of the gifts that we have. And if like a guitar, if it's a bit out of tune, it can always be retuned. You can replace the strings. Then you can, once you get foundational chords and a few things down, you play whatever tune you want, and you take it, you play the new tune kind of thing. You can be someone that plays a new tune that serves oneself, family, community, humanity, And so that's the start point. You got to make a choice. And once you make that choice, find the people, like I was sharing with the tribal thing, that will hold space.
Yeah.
Hold space. For me, that's being present with love. Love is free of judgment. Love is free of condition. Love is free of criticism or anything, because you might have a few backflips and poundings along this way. In fact, we generally do. It's not easy, some of our inner work. And it's because we're really trying to dissolve very entrenched patterns that have had so much repetition. And an underlying theme of pretty much every person that I was working with and the family was fear. And here I was facing my fears in the uncontrolled ocean. Thankfully, you'd never want to control it. It's got a lot of, there's 3 rides in surfing. There's one above the water, which is the ride, the beauty of the ride. You can get the barrel, you can literally get the ride of your life. But there's also the one under the water, which is the wipeout, which is the adversity and the pounding and the hammering that you experience out in the ocean, which we all experience at different times in life too. Sometimes by poor choices, sometimes by, just circumstances that unfold. And then the third ride, or the third wave in surfing, is the wave within. So you've got the opportunity when you practice something or participate in something consciously, intentionally, like your life passion, like surfing, or it could be anything. It could be cricket, baseball, football, knitting, painting, doesn't matter what it is. Then there's lots of opportunity to go inward and grow and expand as a human, your consciousness and your psyche. There's 2 elements of the human psyche that are really always present moment and always available to us to make sense of the world around and make good decisions about it, and as well as make sense of the world within and, explore what we want and make good decisions and nurture what we want. And, those 2 things, I'm happy if you want to, do you want to get?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Health Alliance Australia's podcast. My name is Jeannie Rose Angewartha, and today we're privileged to have Richy Bennett with us. Richy has been consciously immersed in nature and the nurture of human psyche for 30 years. He was a former senior psychologist at the New South Wales Institute, but also known as the surf psychologist, with a passion for riding very large waves to explore every dimension of the human psyche. His clients are as dynamic and multifaceted and as diverse as he is, from elite athletes to mum and dads and elders and youth. Foundational to his practice is the mastery of self, strong family and community values, and connection to nature. Author of 100 Dawns and The Surfer's Mind, mentor, public speaker, and a wealth of lived experience to share with us today. Welcome, Richy. Thanks for coming today.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, as you were saying, what an amazing time to be alive. And, as we started, you were saying that you were a former psychologist, but you had to deregister, but you still practice in and help people, and how you can find, I guess, life beyond APRA.
Well, there was life before it, so obviously there's got to be life after it. I
Yes.
wasn't born registered to that agency. But I had a really wonderful career as a psychologist. I did my studies. I did the old 4+2, where I did your 4 years at uni, including an honours in psychology, where I did a sports psychology thesis, and then I did 2 years supervised practice down the far southwest of Victoria in a public mental health service there. And I really loved that. I really dove into that. It was it was like another planet relative to the life that I'd had. I'm so fortunate. Two beautiful parents and two beautiful siblings and beautiful Labradors and lots of time down the beach and in the bush, and I love the extended family and friends. So it was a real eye opener for me to be totally green out of university, and even at the time I reflected that, gee, I wouldn't know what to say to anyone who's got some pretty serious life experiences going on. So I actually did, when I just finished my honours, I did diploma in solution-oriented counselling as well, because I felt like I didn't have tools to actually have a meaningful dialogue with people on how to help them. Anyway, that was really helpful, because that solution-focused counselling is very much about believing and identifying in the qualities and the potentials of the human, regardless of whether they're having a very serious mental health episode or they're on the brink of self-harm or some other damaging behaviour. Because you're not coming from a pathology perspective, you're coming from a human perspective, and you're meeting the person at their core, which is who they are as a person and the qualities and skills and beauty that they are. And at the same, like surfing is always passion, and there's a lot of really big waves down the coast in Portland. I'd start to surf a few of those around here anyway, and Torquay and Port Campbell and all that. And on with a commitment to face experiencing day to day with my clients in Portland. That most of it was what allopathic medicine or psychiatry would call major mental illness, and there was self-harm and suicidal behaviour, harm to others, other risky, vulnerable behaviours like drug and alcohol misuse, and domestic violence, and sometimes forensic issues. And an underlying theme of pretty much every person that I was working with and the family was fear. And here I was facing my fears in the uncontrolled ocean. Thankfully, you'd never want to control it. And it's got a lot of, there's 3 rides in surfing. There's one above the water, which is the ride, the beauty of the ride. You can get the barrel, you can literally get the ride of your life. But there's also the one under the water, which is the wipeout, which is the adversity and the pounding and the hammering that you experience out in the ocean, which we all experience at different times in life too. Sometimes by poor choices, sometimes by, just circumstances that unfold. And then the third ride, or the third wave in surfing, is the wave within. So you've got the opportunity when you practice something or participate in something consciously, intentionally, like your life passion, like surfing, or it could be anything. It could be cricket, baseball, football, knitting, painting, doesn't matter what it is. Then there's lots of opportunity to go inward and grow and expand as a human, your consciousness and your psyche. And so that's what I was taking into my experiences with people in Portland who would hit the fear line, whether it was, a psychiatrist might say a panic disorder or these kind of diagnostic experiences that people would have. They had fear as an experience. And so what I found surfing the bigger waves was when the fear arrived, firstly, I'd respond with gratitude, because it's a message from your inner being that, like, hey, this is serious, Richy. Like, be sharp, make good decisions. And one of those decisions might actually don't go out today. You got to go into humility and all these other dimensions of your being that come up. So when you go into your fear rather than suppress it or go around it or under it or over it, which there's no longevity to that. You're going to get hammered if you try that strategy over and over. But when you go into your fear, there's one question that for me, is foundational to all human fears. True fear, because anxiety for me is fear of fear, so it's kind of getting right into the illusionary part of it. But true fears, like I could drown out here, or this person could really harm themselves with this behavior they're considering, or something like that, is if our divine essence is we are love manifest, or an incarnation of love, then that must be the origin of everything, including fear. So simple practical questions come up like, love is very caring. So, well, if I'm feeling fear, which can be a mental obstacle, then the first question I ask, what is it I care about here?
Yeah.
And it's a simple question, but it's quite profound in a way, because when I look at the surf, I go, well, I care about me and coming home. I care about catching the wave of my life, and maybe the ocean is so dramatic and big and intense today that opportunity is there as well. And so when it's a real fear in our daily life, such as a relationship situation, that I want to get out of, there's this fear of maybe the person's going to feel, I've let them down or harm them or something, just because I'm about to speak my truth and say, hey, look, you're not the one for me. But there's also like a lot of liberation in that, when you go to, well, what I care about is that I know this is going to be uncomfortable, but I care enough and love enough to go through this experience with as much honor and kindness as I can. It's still going to have its impact. And a wave is like that. A wave doesn't judge or anything, and it just pops up and you catch it, and you'll either get the ride of your life or it will pound you. But it doesn't have anything personal against you. A wave will pound me as heavy as it'll pound you, or as heavy as it'll pound the world's best big wave riders. So I really enjoyed and found a lot of benefit with my own surfing and progress in big ways, with bringing things down to very simple, practical inquiry. And for me, there's two elements of the human psyche that are really always present moment and always available to us to make sense of the world around and make good decisions about it, and as well as make sense of the world within, and explore what we want and make good decisions and nurture what we want. And those two things, I'm happy if you want to, do you want to guess? I don't mind. Maybe the audience.
No, tell us. I'll be a poor guess, but I mean, from what I'm hearing you saying here already is that, I mean, in life is kind of unpredictable as much as you can try and control it. Those waves, we want the highs.
Yeah.
We don't like the burnout, but in order to get the highs, we have to experience the crashes, and a lot of that's that internal battle. And I think facing what we are facing right now, through media messaging, through actual things that are happening to people on the ground, when you can face fear internally, you can pretty much find a solution by breaking things down into simple terms. So what were these things that you were going to share, these tools you're going to share with us?
Well, they're gifts that we all have. We're gifted by nature or divine creation. And one is intuition.
Yes.
We have this inner sense of knowing. We have this inner sense of connectedness. And we have a whole being experience when the intuition arises. So maybe the hair does stand up on the back of our neck. Maybe some movement or shudder that goes through the being, or maybe it's a really beautiful feeling that goes through our being. When you've spent a lot of time, like intuition it's like love. It's there. It's part of our being. However, if we don't play with it, explore it, have our inner sense and inner knowing of its qualities and how it's experienced and how it's applied, and we don't use it, well, it just sits there.
Yeah, practice.
So this is why activities of passion are so wonderful to nurture and expand the human psyche, because if it's a passion, there's a heart energy that wants it and loves it. Like I've almost drowned a couple of times in the ocean, but I still go out. And even today, there's no waves, but I did like a 4-kilometer paddle by myself, just from here up to Bells Beach and back and things like that, just because it's a place where I feel at peace. So our intuition, my intuition for the ocean, I can sense that a wave is coming when there is no objective evidence whatsoever that a wave is coming. And I'll start to move to, a different position in the lineup, and sure enough, it'll pop up and I catch this wave. Now put me in a Formula One car and say hit that bend at 200 like a Formula One driver would do, and I'm going to go straight off and hit the fence because I have no intuition or even skills of that because I haven't learned or practiced it. And then you might put your Formula One driver on a surfboard and they're just getting beaten and thrown up on the beach by the waves because here they are, masters of fear, masters of risk on the racetrack. Put them in a novel environment, and myself included, put me in a novel environment. I'm going to have some base awareness and about fear and about what's going on here, but I'll be very conservative and I'll stick to safety because I just don't know it. Whereas people that go to the next level in high risk situations, but life itself has its risks, will listen to their intuition and be guided by that. And they'll match it up with that second dimension of the human psyche, which is common sense.
Oh, okay. So they're quite disparate, isn't it? Common sense and intuition, and whereas I find, let me speak generally, I do find men generally divert to the mental space and women can be far more intuitive. So it's sort of interesting that in a way, you're blending the masculine and the feminine together into what Jung would call individualization, I think. I'm not that of the merging of the feminine and masculine qualities to a oneness, essentially, to be able to experience life in its fullness. Because we can't always be intuition and we can't always be common sense. And we have to be able to balance those two to move forward. Like even let's say with the familiar topic like, COVID, there was certainly an intuition that people felt there was something not quite right going on. And then they could use their mental space to feed off that intuition to say, okay, there's something definitely not right about what's going on, and exploring that mentally. But if you just stuck with one or the other, you can just end up in a sort of an endless loop as you were, without actually coming to a conclusion yourself of how you're going to navigate through the storm, essentially, which is what we're being asked to do in this life. And I think we were talking about earlier about how we've been conditioned, as you were said, conditioned from childhood into safety. And you were talking about apathy and self-interest, and these two things that we have been conditioned into. So how do we break these cycles of when it comes to things that we've been programmed, I guess? But no one wants to believe that we're in a matrix, like we're all free, supposedly. But when you actually go deeper into it, you realize, hang on a minute, a lot of life is about unlearning what we were programmed from childhood to be. Like even that thing, the question that you talked about relationships earlier, how difficult it is for people to form relationships these days, and break off relationships that are toxic because of fear, because of questions of, because of not really knowing self.
Yeah, that's fundamental, and it's also the path to navigate all this, in my view. So going back to intuition and common sense, for me, that's a synergy, that's a dance, and quite often, and there's a lot of conditioning to be in the head, not the heart. And if you just wanted to have a very generalized view, you could say the common sense is in the head. You're putting logic together, you're putting connections together. You got a sense of, well, hang on, is that a respiratory illness? Well, why are they saying block my major respiratory pathway? Like that doesn't sound right, and don't go out in fresh air. But it's ideally it starts with here, which is something doesn't feel right, and then some people don't need to even do the common sense because the feeling's enough for them to go, I'm just not going to participate, or I'm going to go over here. And I met quite a number of people like that during, the early 2020s and all that. But other people will ignore the feeling that something's not quite right and do a lot of mental gymnastics, and their common sense becomes uncommon sense. Their logic becomes illogical, and they're out on that polarity. And so that's when there's quite a disconnect between head and heart. And that's why I call it a synergy and a dance, because the intuition's available always as a sense and a feeling and something that you can interpret and build some intellect or common sense around, so you feel even more clear and strong. Like I might get a sense that the waves just look a bit gnarly today, and then I know this wave, and I know that when the tide gets too low, it is not surfable. And my common sense is the tide is going out. So you know what? I won't go out now. I'll come back when the tide starts rising and see if it's surfable then. So you got the uncomfortable feeling that something's not right here. And then you can use your common sense and that part of your psyche to be more confident that it's a good decision to stay on the beach today. But the other things can come in here, like such as ego and all that, where your mate turns up. Oh, you're going out, you're not going to go out, you're chicken. And then these other things kind of come in. And so this is where knowing thyself, that really profound little saying, going inward first and then outward, that's what's been flipped. We're taught to go outward. We're taught to go to a search engine. We're taught to outsource our answers. We're taught to outsource common sense. We've been told that external authorities are our only source of truth. These kinds of things. Like, it's profoundly strong and a repeated message that what's out there, experts, illusionary authorities, are the source of truth, are the source of logic, science, this kind of thing. Whereas we all have the ability to sense and feel our way through it all. And if we need to connect a few dots with our common sense, well, we can also do that. But for a period of time, maybe just being purely intuitive, which is what you find in the flow state, which is what you find when people are in very extreme, intense moments of high performance. It's all intuitive because you do not have time to think. It might cost you your life if you take the time to think. You need to observe, respond, that's when the human psyche, this is fundamental to performance psychology, where I've spent most of my time when I was a registered psychologist, and I still do mentor people in the performance psychology space, is when you're in a flow state, everything is happening present moment at very rapid speed, but feels like it's slowed down. There's not a stop and think scenario. There's a response. Like you watch, they just had the Australian Open. Some of those serves at 240, 250 kilometers an hour. You can't think, should I move left or right here? You intuit. And that's how they get the sometimes not just get it back in court, they'll smash it back a winner straight off a big serve. So you can't think these things. So this is where, like I say, it's a synergy and a dance, because sometimes one partner leads and one follows, sometimes it shifts. And then, of course, that might be determined by the melody or the rhythm of the moment.
So it's caves for practice, isn't it? Like because I was thinking like your example of a race car driver, surfing, right? They're in a different environment. And I think during this whole current time, let's say we were in, a lot of people feel out of their depth right now with everything that's going on, whether it's petrol shortages or, pandemic responses or anything that comes into play. And so the default setting, I feel, even going against people's intuition, is let's just trust the government, even though they don't trust the government, because what else is there? But how do people navigate to the unfamiliar when their life has been so comfortable for so long? And I think a number of us whose lives weren't very comfortable, who were used to navigating against the system or had various personal challenges, health challenges in life, and perhaps even, using extreme sports as an example, we're used to being in the flow state, being able to make those decisions quite rapidly and knowing that we were 100% right, not maybe 99% right, but, we were quite confident in our decision without having external influences. Do you think that the practice of doing something like that takes you to the edge helps people navigate life better?
Yeah, absolutely. The fundamental of performance psychology is bringing your best self to the moment, whatever the performance demand might be. Or, of course, if it's a team, bring the best team to that moment. Now, if that's personal best, that line there's personal best, that's Richie's 100-meter PB, 20 seconds, because I'm more like a turtle than a runner. I'm a water creature. But anyway, then for me to do 19 seconds or sub 20, I got to go somewhere I've never been before. Personal best beyond that current personal best is a new place. It's the unknown. So I actually need to be able to, and this is everything inside's a comfort zone. Ask me to do 100 in 25 seconds, no worries, because I can do 20 at my best, right? Ask me to do 100 in 19 seconds. Wow, I've got to step out. I've got to do something I've never done before. So here's my comfort zone. Here's my discomfort. So as a mental skill, I need to nurture my innate abilities to create comfort in the uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable to, how did I know as a 12-year-old I could survive a wipeout on a 25-foot wave? Well, I don't know. But I didn't just paddle out at 12 and into 25 feet. I paddled out into 5 feet. Then I was 13, 6 feet, 14, 7 feet. And, you know, took a few bigger jumps. And then when I was, whatever it was, 21, 22, first season in Hawaii, well, I learned what it was like to fall off on a 25-foot wave. And then I learned, because I'm sitting here, that I can survive that. And not only survive it, I enjoyed it. You know, and isn't that wonderful? Because sometimes that PB line stays fixed for a very long time because of fear, not because of capability. And in fact, I see a lot of that not just in elite athletes, but in population in general, that we do hold ourselves back. And a lot of that conditioning, like that self-interest apathy that I shared earlier in our dialogue before the recording, was, that's part of being very indoctrinated. And the indoctrination is an attachment to comfort, convenience. So my self-interest is going to take precedence over me getting up and doing something. And then on the other side, I'm apathetic about what's going on around me, because I'm so focused here. So, and plus the conditioning of illusionary authorities, i.e. government, well, they'll fix it. And the amount of times you hear in lunchtime conversations, just general dialogue in the community, that's that general statement, the government should be doing something about it. Well, why don't we do something about it?
Yeah.
Because if we do something about it, that's stepping out of our comfort zone. And if we're attached to comfort, and if we're being conditioned, and by the way, I'm not blaming anyone, because I did a lot of research, over the last 4 or 5 years about, well, how did we get here? And humanity, in my research, has been intentionally conditioned to be self-interested, apathetic, immature, indoctrinated to be compliant consumers. Like that's just foundational. So, when you share, how do we move out of these spaces? It's hard. If you've never been to the gym and someone's like, hey, come to the gym, we're going to pump weights, your muscles are going to be so sore. And maybe when you go there, you're going to go, I'm a grown man, I can barely bench 50 kilos. What's going on? My mate's doing 150. But, well, your mate's been bench pressing for 15 years. So that's the reason he or her has built up their capacity to deal with more. And the human psyche is the same. We can nurture, we can build, we can expand the human psyche to deal with more. But ironically, when it's the human psyche, there might be more going on in the external world, but we're actually dealing with it better. We're more efficient. The efficiency is what we master. So that it's not we need a bigger muscle in our mind. We just need more efficient, because we've got intuition and common sense. We can strategize. So things can, like Mike Tyson can throw the biggest punch he's ever thrown at you, and you can block it, and you're probably still going to get sent backwards, but you can dodge it, and it didn't even touch you. So the efficiency is actually movements of mind that minimize impact and maximize what your intention is. And it's quite interesting, because I mentioned earlier about like psychiatry and the allopathic approach to mental health, the mental illness model. But before that, as we know, there was the natural therapies. There was homeopathy and osteopathy and those kind of things. And fundamental to those, just, I'm not a practitioner in those realms, but I seek those people for my health improvements. And one very wise nutritionist I've connected with, she said to me, look, there's there's two reasons for dis-ease or imbalance, health getting out. One's toxicity, one's deficiency. That immediately made sense to me from a psychology perspective, because what's toxicity? Toxicity is a politician blaring at you through the screen 120 days in a row, few messages. That's toxic. Now, most people understand and agree that pornography and violence is toxic, but they don't kind of realise that that politician trying to penetrate your psyche with fear messages and being in a position where they can execute some powers that do have a tangible impact in your daily life, well, that's toxic. And then on the efficiency side, if you haven't, on the physiology, the vitamins, the minerals, that kind of thing, the nutrition's not built up, then it's hard to detox, it's hard to rebuild. And the psyche's the same. If you haven't spent time attuning to intuition, playing with and mastering your common sense, and doing a lot more discovery than knowledge gathering, and what I mean by that is, like a seed of a tree, every piece of human wisdom for our whole lifespan is within, and it's about discovering it. And a lot of what I've done in my career and still do as a mentor is help people get things out of their head that are no longer necessary or never were necessary. And then it opens the space and the energy to discover the things that are important and the things that do, really work. So, but there's also a third element, and it does come on both the physical and the mental, or the whole being health. And for me, the common term is trauma, which is very adverse, very intense, very, like if I get hit by a car, then physically I had I didn't have a toxicity of aluminium getting sprayed on me from the skies. I didn't have a deficiency. I didn't eat enough bananas. I got hit by a car, right? So now I've got broken, I've got an acute traumatic event that I've got some healing to do, but still minimizing, eliminating toxicity and improving and dealing with whatever deficiency, getting myself up with nutrition is going to help my healing. So psychologically it's the same. So not only, it's like that drop of water on the stone. Each drop doesn't really seem like it's doing much, but over time it starts to erode and create a dent. So those messages you're getting through the TV, through the screens, basically, because we have, all different access to all different screens, phones and all that kind of stuff. And it's everywhere. I mean, I don't go to gyms much, but when I worked a lot in the Institute of Sports system, I was around gyms, and there's big TVs just blaring stuff at the athletes while they're training.
Really?
You're constantly getting bombarded. And at some point that's going to make a dent in your psyche and even start to come into the realm of a trauma.
Yep.
And people can have attachments to those too. Like in the very early stages, like mid 2020 and all that, I listened to a podcast. I can't remember the lady's name. She was a relationship counselor in America. And she very eloquently, really beautiful, simple, practical language just shared about how the government and population, it was like a domestic violence relationship whereby the government were the perpetrator and the population were the victim or trying to survive this. And, well, how come the victim or the person trying to survive the DV doesn't leave? Because, well, what's out there? Even though what's happening is wrong, this is what is known. That back to that PB or that comfort zone. Of course, it's uncomfortable to be treated so poorly and harmed so badly. But, well, what's out there, particularly when a lot of that harm might be psychological, telling you what's out there is even worse when it's actually not. And then, well, if you go in here, it's bliss kind of thing. So, but there's so much fear going on that people don't move around or move into it, because that's not, it's in a way that can feel counterintuitive. But I've done a fair bit of rock climbing, and when you're really starting to get gassed in your arms, you're holding, you might get, you're on a pitch and you can't find the next hold, you're starting to get a bit gassed. The instinct, because that's survival, that's not intuition, it's different. The instinct is to hold the wall because you don't want to fall, but now you're using more energy and your face is here. So there's no way you're going to see the next hold. So you actually created a worse situation by an instinctual reaction. But intuition, a good climber will know that they've got to hang out and take one hand off, have a good hold, of course. You can shake it out. One arm's getting a rest while the other is now on a skeleton, not a muscle. So it's getting a bit of a rest too. And wow, look at my vision.
Yeah.
Now I can see the next move. So this is where intuition, when it's grown intentionally, I'm the rock climber that's going to lean out off the wall when I'm just about to fall off, because I'll get, both limbs will get a rest, particularly this one. Then I'll swap it over. This one will get even more rest. And in that time, I'll scan what's available in terms of the next hold, the next move. And it might actually be going back down and across to that ledge, not the direction I thought I'm eventually going to the top of the pitch, but maybe I need to take a different path. So again, it comes back to, well, a different path is outside. It's the unknown. The path I know, I just keep walking because at least it's known, even though there's harm and damage happening, it's known. So these are really, really difficult psychic energies and patterns to break. That's why I said earlier, like this is not an easy part.
And it is very difficult, because I was thinking too, you know, when you look around, if the majority of the population are unhealthy physically, but also, you know, we've got a large mental health issues, then you can feel okay yourself, but you're not actually exercising that psychic, you know, that muscle, right? And you don't have the people around you that are pushing those boundaries. So one of the things when you're talking about earlier about pushing those boundaries physically with surfing was doing the 19-day water fast recently that I did. I actually found that to be kind of a similar thing. It took me to the edge psychologically and physically. And I came out the other side a different person. So when I hear you talking about, and I've actually thought I need to do more physical activity of what you, but maybe not. I won't do those waves like you're doing. I'm not a good enough swimmer to do that, but I do think that there is something in that too, because you're testing yourself beyond your limits and you're flexing that muscle. It also reminds me of time when I was going through heart failure and I came home from hospital and they were like, no, don't do anything. Just, you know, stay seated and just take your meds. And every day I would do 200 meters and I did 400 the next day and 600, 800 kilometers. And then at the end of the week, I was doing a couple of kilometers and hospital was ringing me, what are you doing? You know? And of course I recovered. They never asked me how I did it, using, again, a number of things you talked about, nutrition and getting rid of toxicity, essentially the foundation of health. But it's interesting flexing that muscle. And even when you start doing it and you start doing the 200 meters, the 400, immediately there's that sense of, oh, risk, danger. Now, am I doing something wrong? But then there's the question of, what if I don't take that risk? What if I don't flex that muscle? And because I feel like some of us who've been gifted with these life challenges, we're able to flex that muscle more in life and get out of our comfort zone. When a lot of these other issues came along in the world, we were better equipped to handle it because we were already used to practicing that psychological muscle. And I think where things we're discussing today is like, how do people get out of that comfort zone? Like, I think too, mentorship is a really, and hearing other people's stories, you know, like just hearing your story, it just inspires other people to think, what can I do personally in my life to stretch my resilience, my mental resilience, in order to overcome life's challenges, whatever they may be.
Yeah. Well, for me, like I view mentoring as, it's just guided self-study. And a lot of the mentoring I do with people, they might come along with an intention, a topic, what they consider a personal problem or challenge. But it's usually through an activity of passion and walking that path that the insights organically arise. And so, you know, we're built to move. Movement's, you know, health. And so when you get people moving, maybe not on the most feared or challenging thing first, you know, if I can't do chin-ups, then don't say, well, let's do, you know, 3 sets of 10 chin-ups, your first gym session. Hey, you know, biceps pretty important for your chin-ups. Let's do some light bicep curls. And you know, let's do a supported chin-up and work through it. But there might be some other activities that people are doing that actually start to build upper body strength anyway. So when they go to do the chin up, they get it. And the mind's the same. So for me, every single human on the planet is challenged, experiences adversity of some kind, and therefore has the opportunity to step out of that comfort zone and expand or stay in it. So like it does start with a choice. And you could be the most like thousands of years living in the bush, no touch of modern civilization, but you still might lose a child and go through that grief. You still might have a brother or a tribesman or woman taken by a predator, and you need to go through that experience. And how do we do that? Well, we'll have our own individual experience, but this is part of our nature as humans. We're tribal people. Loved ones come around and hold space. They don't do our inner work for us, but they come around, hold space. Ritual helps evoke inner work, things like this. Well, where's that in our current society?
Is that what some of the things that you learnt from going out with the tribes?
Yeah. When I was in Portland, I spent a lot of time with the Gunditjmara mob down there. And they shared story and with me, because we had a situation where young Aboriginal people were becoming mentally unwell in the view of the system.
Yes.
And they were really kind of lost because that was disparate to their ancestral origins, and then they didn't fit into Western situation or just the modern situation. And but me being young, I was having a lot of the young Aboriginal boys and girls like on my caseload, and I was just like, if they got really unwell, they might get an involuntary admission, so they're disconnected from country, community, and culture, put in a locked health facility for a day or however many days, sometimes medicated, and then they're discharged.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. So I put a proposal into the service about, we need more culturally aware and sensitive ways to assist these youngsters. If we're going to impose this, because that's essentially what's happening, impose this way onto the whole community, including the people in Gunditjmara and other mobs, well, then we need to be culturally aware and sensitive. And I'd built some good relations with some of the elders locally just through the work I was doing individually with some of the youngsters. And then I put it to them, and they're like, yeah, well, we can share with you a lot more about how we work in terms of connection to community, country, and culture. And that was wonderful, because what evolved over time was a youngster might become unwell and on the Mental Health Act actually meet criteria for involuntary admission. But we got to a point where, with support of elders and community members, and then, say me as a staff member from the Public Mental Health Service, we go walkabout, we go nature.
Wow.
And these kids would settle very quickly. No medication, no other interventions other than let's connect them more deeply to country, community, and culture, rather than pull them out, plug them in over here, and then discharge, and then, well, where do I go? Because, I mean, it doesn't, for me, like, this was actually a human thing. We were just learning from the local Gunditjmara mob more about what it is to be human, because I was doing the same approach as best I could with non-Aboriginal people, because
it's a shame that we can't.
Sisters are immature, like,
it's a shame we can't adopt those models for the Western model, which we think has moral, psychologically, mentally superior. And as we were talking about, is based on, a lot of very questionable things. When we started this, before we were talking in the podcast, how, modern psychology at its roots has so many flaws about it. And certainly one of them is individuality, I guess. When I've had interactions with child protection, they don't seem to care about the family as a unit so much as child safety, and everything as the holy grail of child safety. Take the child from the family, uproot that child and put them in an institution or whatever, and do as much harm as possible. When they get to 18, they'll end up on the streets. And they don't care about healing a whole family or changing even the structure of society in order for society to heal and have I mean, what is the intention? What are the outcomes of this capitalist society that we're living in? What do we want, and how do we class wealth in this nation? Is it owning our own house, or is it having a loving, connected community that supplies everyone's needs? You know, what are we trading off for this, you know, ideology, I guess, that we've been conscripted, not involuntarily, into believing that this is the only way? And like, even when it comes to what your services that you were offering, or the government funds, it's like you can't, there's limits to how, you know, these things can be done, because the system says you must do it our way, you must follow APRA rules. We'll only fund certain things, even in terms of natural health. But it always seems to be the poison side that they want. They don't seem to want the healing side, because there's money and control in that poison side of things. And they don't want people to be whole, it seems to me.
Yeah, it's my primary intention is redundant.
Yes.
Ideally, there doesn't need to be psychologists or mentors or that kind of thing, because the foundation of a healthy society is a healthy family, and the foundation of a healthy family is mum and dad, and mum and dad have done the inner work as well as the teamwork to be mature, stable, good intuition, good common sense, letting the kids take risks in an observed manner when they're really young, but, you know, supporting their ability to, because risk taking is about stepping out of your comfort zone. So if you don't get regular experience of that, then you don't develop the confidence and the self-esteem and all the other qualities that help you step out. You know, when you work with the world's best athletes, they, of course, spend a lot of time tuning the mind, the body, the skill, the equipment, everything for winning, for best performance. PB, winning, achieve the goals, master what my activity of passion is, my performance is. But the best of the best also spend a fair bit of time on this other part of performance. What do you reckon that might be?
Nutrition and getting all the other things right.
It's very mental. I mean, it unfolds in all dimensions in performance, but it's very mental, and is error correction.
Oh,
because
the
they have
feedback loops.
Yeah, well, they have the awareness that if I'm stepping out into the unknown, the best I can do is to get to a point of readiness, and that's what I share with and guide people to. You know, you never know, but that's one of the reasons why it's the ride of your life, because it was just beyond what you ever thought it could be. And what you did was get yourself in a position of readiness and opportunity to go when the moment came. Or not, if you're not ready, you know. And so to do that, part of it is, well, I've got to have a way to correct errors that might happen in the moment. Such as I jump to my feet and the board gets lifted off the wave and I'm now in the air. I'm not even connected to the water. So what do? And you don't have 5 minutes to work this out. You have less than 5 milliseconds, you know, not even. So error correction. And, well, who's going to go into correction? Well, someone with humility is going to do that. Not someone who just thinks they know. Yeah, so this is where a lot of the whatever's happened from the beginnings to present day with the professions of psychology, psychiatry, and the science, the narratives, the approaches to mental health, mental illness, that is what it is. And it's not my life's work to debunk it or even really comment on it. I've had experiences with it, so direct lived and professional experiences with it. And all I've simply done is choose another way, which is to be guided by Mother Nature. And how did Mother Nature design the human psyche? What's its structure? What's its function? And the way it's unfolded for me, because of my natural interest, you know, I got into psychology because I had pictures all over my bedroom wall of surfers riding waves that were bigger than our house. So I used to think as a little kid, what on earth is going on in their mind that they will risk their life? And here I am loving my surfing, but going, oh man, no, Waimea Bay, these things at the time. That's just beyond. But then I had such a love for it and I worked it out. And then here I am surfing Waimea Bay like 10, 15 years later. And it's because when you've got a real clarity on something that you love, you'll pretty much do anything for it. I mean, that's a parent and a child, isn't it?
Mm.
Mum and dad and a child. And now when it's self-love, which I feel has been intentionally indoctrinated out of us, that's where people might follow an illusionary authority or an expert or some external direction on what's best for me instead of an innate knowing about what's best for me. I don't catch that wave because of any external reason. I could die if I fall. That's silly, right?
Yeah.
I catch that wave because I want it and I take full responsibility and have spent time on error correction in case things don't go right. Now, I might not correct the error in the moment and still fall off and get pounded, but that's also part of error correction. I do my breath hold. I train my mind to be calm in a very intense, critical situation so that I have longevity of the breath hold. So I give myself best opportunity, not certainty, best opportunity to survive and be ready to surf another wave another day. And all these themes play out literally in daily life.
I mean, it's a very expansive model that you're talking about, not over. And when you think about all the systems in place, they're a very reductionist model. And I totally agree that, it's the self-love. It's almost a dirty word. We've been the whole idea that you could love yourself. Like it's so in a way that's not harmful to other people, but that you could actually prioritize what's in it for me. Like when you think about the whole COVID shot, that was crazy. How many people were indoctrinated to this idea of do it for grandma, do it for someone else, do it for society, and not in case of, well, what happens if something goes wrong with me? Who's going to look after me? Or,
Yeah.
even just to question who was making it, and or the like you were told you were selfish, you were killing grandma. So all of this stuff was kind of weaponized. And how did that happen? It didn't happen in the last few years. It happened over decades of time that people have got to this stage where they, like, everyone likes to think that we're not communists and we're like this free capitalist society, but it's almost a communist mindset where you're thinking about the collective before you think of yourself. And I'm not saying that's due in a selfish way where we're just hoarding petrol like they're trying to make out in the news media now. But in the sense of, we don't even want to protect our own self-interest, whether that's through our own relationships or financially or physically. We're always sacrificing something for the greater good, and I mean, it's such a powerful thing. But how does one break free from that? And we were talking about that earlier. Like, how do you help people out of this mind control? I mean, it is mind control, essentially, that we've all been conditioned into to various degrees, that we've, like some people are further down the track of liberation, where they are totally liberated from the system. They're independently working, independently choosing the life that they want every day, regardless of finances or whatever. They're free within themselves to live their life on their terms.
There's some really fine lines that we need to develop our discernment about. So, for example, that self-interest one, as I shared before, like in my observation, we've been indoctrinated for self-interest, but the indoctrination is about attaching to me, and expanding the ego. Right? Whereas the self-interest around, well, if I go again this week, just because I don't want to let my friends down, then I'm going to be so tired and I've got this thing on the next morning. That's, to me, that's not self-interest, that's self-care. This is where the language is very powerful. And and this is where, like, a lot of athletes get hammered by partners, friends, things like that about being selfish. But it's like, hey, I have for most sports, a time limited span to really master this and experience and deliver my PBs, that when I'm 40 or 50, there's no way physically and otherwise I'll be able to do that time in the run or that. So this path I'm on right now is not selfish, it's self-full. It's about fulfilling oneself. Now, people can do it in a selfish manner, and you see that. You do see that. But people who are grounded in the love of what they're doing and the truth of their intentions, it's a self-full, it's a self-fulfilling path. And they tend to be more balanced anyway with, discernment about, what they will give and when and that kind of thing. So there's some fine lines there. And again, like, how do you get good at anything? Well, you got to practice it. And when how much time do you get to practice these things if, mum and dad are both working and there's daily living, financial and other stresses and these kind of things? Well, at some point, there's still choice. And in fact, from birth till now, I'm sitting here with whatever I've got in my psyche, my body, my being, because of every choice I've made from birth till now. And I've got to own that because, like if I had a health issue or other things, I've got to own that, because if you own something, you can do something with it. If someone else owns it, you're at their mercy, aren't you? So you've got to own it. So at some point, if you're wanting to break free, like you're saying, the mind control and these things, you need to make some conscious choices. And it can start with, you know what, I'm going to seek farmers and get natural, non-drugged animals, non-drugged, non-chemical farmed food. So at least I'm getting good nutrition. And I'll build on that. Now, that's a wonderful choice. You're taking command of not only invigorating your being with good, healthy nutrition, but by default, now you're not going to large corporates for what they promote as food. And that makes a difference too. So like at its core, it is literally about choice. So if you want to move out of and away from these things, and when everything started happening in 2020, a lot of what I started to look at to skill myself up, because I just thought, oh, this is just going to be one of the most hardcore adversities for humanity. And so a lot of people are going to be harmed by this psychologically. So like I do with everything, I tend to jump in the deep end. I started watching podcasts of people that were survivors of the most abhorrent things you can think about that happen to children and things like that. And at some point, two things really struck me. One was at some point they made a choice for a better life. And as hard as it and the sheer depth of trauma and harm they'd experienced, like I can't even fathom. But these people made the choice to step out of it somehow. And their life was at risk too, to even get out of these things, And then the second thing I noticed was that they'd gone through several, this is a generalization, but most of them had shared, look, I tried to find my way through the trauma through X therapy, X psychiatrist, X psychologist. So these systems that are in place.
Yep.
And I would say upwards of around 100% of them said, I started to make progress when I let go of trying to heal myself in that system and discovered natural pathways. Now, natural pathways we've talked about with food and movement and exercise. The way I work with the human psyche is a natural pathway. It's already starting with the awareness that the human psyche is just beautiful. It's one of the gifts that we have. And if like a guitar, if it's a bit out of tune, it can always be retuned. You can replace the strings. Then you can, once you get foundational chords and a few things down, you play whatever tune you want, and you take it, you play the new tune kind of thing. You can be someone that plays a new tune that serves oneself, family, community, humanity, And so that's the start point. You got to make a choice, and once you make that choice, find the people, like I was sharing with the tribal thing, that will hold space.
Yeah.
Hold space. For me, that's being present with love. Love is free of judgment. Love is free of condition. Love is free of criticism or anything, because you might have a few backflips and poundings along this way. In fact, we generally do. It's not easy, some of our inner work, and it's because we're really trying to dissolve very entrenched patterns that have had so much repetition. So, like a tennis serve, like Ash Barty doesn't have to think about the biomechanics of her serve. She's just done it thousands of times, and so executes it with a very high level of success almost every time. But if you asked her to change her grip or some other element of her biomechanics, you're going to see slower serves and faults for a period of time. But if she persists at it and believes that this will make me a better server and a better tennis player, then you'll start to get an increase in speed again and an increase in the consistency and accuracy of her landing the serve where she wants to land it with the new technique. And by default, I was going to say,
like what you were saying, sorry. It's like what you're saying about 180, your 180 rule, isn't it? You know, like you're trying to push the boundaries. So these people, if they want to be elite athletes, they can't be doing the same as what other people are doing. They have to not just do their personal best, but they have to go beyond.
Well, they'll do the fundamentals because,
Yep.
like every tennis player has to learn serves, volleys, ground shots, things like that. And every surfer's got to learn to pop up, left, right, all those things. But yeah, this is part of the self-love, isn't it? You go into who you are and what you bring, because we're all human first, and then we happen to be a performer, a mother, a father, a surfer, a tennis player. Like we have these spaces where we perform, where we want to bring our best self to those moments, which is why I use the perform word, because performance psychology can help mums and dads be better mums and dads, just as much as performance psychology can help the elite athlete become a better athlete. So that's the path that is the starting point, and that's where that self-love comes in, because who I am as a person is going to come out in my surfing or my parenting or my tennis or whatever it is. And if I discover that there's things I don't like about me, well, if the self-love is lacking, I will be hard on me and I'll have loops of very negative self-talk in my mind. But if I have self-love, like when your child makes an error, or you see a pattern of behavior that's unfolding and you're kind of aware of the peer group they've just got involved in, you can see where things might lead. You don't ignore them, criticize them, berate them, like our inner dialogue can be. You hold space with love, you role model, and you try and engage in some dialogue to help them discover what's going on and what might be outcomes of this path. So we apply that to self because we love our child, our friend, our teammate. So I want to help them. Well, applying that to self is the path to remove us from mind control or living in the head,
I actually found this saying just on Facebook today. It says, sometimes we don't want to heal because the pain is the last connection to what we have lost. And I was thinking about this. There's a lot of people who are sitting in trauma because it's easy, or not easy, but it's familiar, right? Like we were talking about earlier. Being in a traumatic state, traumatic relationship, just even this traumatic media that we're exposed to. People, because I post a lot on social media, LinkedIn, and what I found is that the posts are very inspirational, they're very positive, they're talking expansive, things that we're talking about today that were actually genuinely life-changing. They don't get very much traction, but it's not that that's important. I think that the few people that are interested in that sort of stuff will take it and it will totally change their life. But the vast majority are prepared to sit within that traumatic space because, as we were talking earlier, it's familiar to them. It's safe. It's safer to sit in an unhealed, toxic environment, eat toxic food. So to me, sometimes when you talked earlier about that 180 rule, sometimes just break the habits. It's just to make really, changes that you don't necessarily have to logically think about. For example, okay, during COVID, they said, no, don't see people. So you just do the opposite of what they did and go and see people. Or, you know, they said, stay home. You try and get out as much as you could. Don't take the vaccine. No, you don't take it. So you didn't even need to do any research at all. You were able to simply navigate a certain path. Like, so for example, you look at the supermarket food and go, I'm not going to eat it. So what do you have to do in order to not eat the supermarket food? You've got to make this extended effort in order to source your food from other places. And in doing that journey, you end up meeting a lot of like-minded people and connecting with that different energy that's very positive. And then they influence you to try different things and, you know, and bring more knowledge into your world that expands your worldview. So sometimes it just takes a case of just deviating from the current path that you're in without actually really making, because it takes so much energy to say, make that jump, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the part of, you know, when I was sharing with you before we started the interview about my 180 rule, that was actually a mental strategy. And it was a mental strategy that was it, because the mind works best when it's free and open. And a big part of mastery is efficiency. If you can execute PB with using, say, 5% of your mental power, well, why not?
Yes.
If you're in an event where you've got rounds, quarters, semi-finals, because you've always got something in your back pocket. If you need to peak, you need to rise, you've got plenty. Plus, you won't have as much fatigue, all these kind of things. So for me, when I moved through 2020 to present day with all the external messages coming to me, if my intuition was, well, that doesn't feel right, my common sense wasn't going into logic. It was just 180 rule, going to do the opposite. And well, now I'm doing the opposite. I don't like that topic has gone because I'm down this path.
Mm.
And so that was actually a mental strategy. And these are the kind of mental strategies I teach people, you know, two things that help with our psyche to move through these situations of breaking patterns of mental movement and physical movement, choices to go to that shop instead of that farm, things like that, is to have present moment strategies such as, 180 rule, like I don't have to think of it and I'm not going to waste my day thinking of it. I'm just going to get on with my intuition says not right, bang, go the opposite. And then the second one is your bigger picture perspective. So, you know, what we we're saying before about, you know, the self fall and the self-interest and all that, when you're walking the path of, of what you know is your truth and your love on a self-interesting, or what I share with self-care really, then there is more of you available to give.
Mm.
If you deplete oneself, then there is less of you available to give. And then I think, as you shared in that dialogue, well, sometimes you actually made a poor decision and now you're the one that's injured that needs the help. So it's a bit like if you're on a boat and someone falls overboard, if you can't swim, don't jump in. That's not going to work. Now, that's not you being selfish and, I'm not going to help anyone. That's smart, because that means there's now still just one person and not two in the ocean that are struggling.
Yeah.
If you find a buoy, or if you call for someone and someone comes that does have the skills, you've done a fantastic job. You've done the best you've done in that moment with who you are and everything you've got available to you in that moment. If you're not a swimmer, you're not a rescue person, well, don't step into that space. Find a way to assist the person that's from your space of ability at the time. Yeah. So when you start shifting those perspectives, like a big picture one is, for me, from 2020 to present day, there's some experiences I've had that are just profoundly harmful to the psyche. Like they've just been profoundly harmful. And I've been healing myself through these life experiences. And at the same time, and this is a perspective example, the silver linings that have emerged in the last 5-6 years have also been profound and beautiful. And I have a
Yeah.
lot of gratitude for that. And when I was on the surfing tour and I was writing my book, The Surfer's Mind, I interviewed about 80 of the world's best surfers. And one of them was, her name was Kayla Kennelly. And she never won a world title, but she was the best female big wave rider. And she charged. She's Hawaiian. She's from Kauai. She's fantastic in, they started surfing Tahiti, very dangerous wave there when I was on tour. And when I was interviewing her for my book, she said, this whole surfing competition thing, it's all about teachers and students. And one day I'm the teacher and I'm winning and I'm teaching everyone a lesson, and other days I'm the student. So there's all these external forces around us that are present in our current reality, and they can be viewed as pain, limit, control, and on a, you could argue on a very practical present moment experience that they are. And at the same time, well, where's that going to get you? At the same time, they can be viewed as teachers.
Yeah.
As, okay, I have to step out of my comfort zone. I have to go beyond who I am as a human from birth till now to rise to this, to support my family, or to survive it if we're in a survival mode, but at least get through it and then and thrive, or get to a better place, get back to me being in PB mode. And if that person or if that entity didn't bring me that challenge, well, I might not have had the reason. Like I learn about noticing, and things like speeding fines and other things start to disappear because there's a way to respond to these things when you stand in your inner authority, and you're doing it very honorably and peacefully. You're not standing over, you're standing in. And I never even thought of that. Oh, damn, got no speeding fines, pay it because I don't want the inconvenience. Because part of that conditioning for comfort is convenience is a big one. That's why going to a standard supermarket that's got everything, at least in the packaging, it might not be everything in terms of the nutrition your body really needs, but people will go there instead of, well, oh, I live in an urban area. How am I going to find a farmer? Well, as you were sharing, once you start to open your mind and start to explore these pathways, you find that there's actually quite a few people doing this. There's quite a few people that have other talents and wisdoms that help invigorate our own. And, going back to that tribal experience, well, now you are surrounded by a number of people that are like-minded, like-hearted. And at the times where they need to hold space for you, they're there, and then you can hold space for them, but you're also sharing insights and practical skills and ways to be self-reliant and self-full, fulfill oneself, and then be able to overflow more.
That is definitely the silver lining through all of this. And I think, having gone through grief and trauma myself, at some point you realize you can't separate the trauma from who you are today. That who you are today has been a result of all those lived experiences. So there's no turning back the clock and saying, I wish X, Y, and Z hadn't happened, or it should have been a different way. And what I found helpful was to hang on to those silver linings, which are the new relationships, the new knowledge, the new path that you're on. And look at those experiences, not necessarily as bad and good, to sort of, I know we have this kind of binary idea of life, good, bad, evil, but to actually start to separate that and just see it as obstacles or mountains to climb. And when you do that, and the emotional attachment isn't there to those things, it helps to move on, and it creates this, I guess, story of your own life and your own life journey, where it kind of life makes sense, and there's a certain purpose to the madness of it all. Like sometimes when you're going through it, you just think, oh, what the hell is happening? But then after you've walked a certain direction with it, you realize, oh, it all kind of makes sense of how I am today. And it's taken me outside of that comfort zone that I would never have taken myself out of voluntarily. And stretched me, which is, really been the heart of what we've discussed today. How does one get out of this comfort zone? Sometimes we don't actually have a choice. And it's just the life circumstances happen, but it's really so good to actually have those connections, to be that support system, that tribe that we're talking about initially. I don't think, even on a health journey, I don't think it's really possible to do on your own. Like you just need, even if it's just one good friend to stand by you in that time, because also that aspect where you discussed earlier about self-analysis of your, like the human mind's a very strange thing. Sometimes you can feel like you're making progress, but you're really not. But a good friend will say to you, hang on a minute. Maybe you need to pull back from the doom scrolling. Maybe you need to separate, get back into nature, and will pull you out of a dark situation if you just, tune in and listen to them for a second, take a week off, and you suddenly realize, yeah, they were right. I needed to separate myself from that, which is where being within a community and not so detached from it, and as well as being able to then go into self, allows you to move forward in life.
Yeah, it's part of our nature to be with each other, and to have really beautiful relationships with our fellow men and women, and just our community. And for me, that's like what you're just sharing there. I always have the infinity symbol, that it's life is just infinite, and and when it comes to that internal world and external world, we go inward so that we discover and see more that we can bring outward, and then sometimes outward. Yeah, like you said, a caring friend will say, "Hey, Rich, stop being a kook," and it's enough. Yeah, I'm being a bit of a kook. Yeah, you're actually right there. Thanks. And you go inward and you make the shifts, and you go outward. So it's like that synergy and dance of intuition and common sense. There's the inner world and the world around. And one of the most important shifts that I think has been indoctrinated that helps us get out of that mind control is to bring back in and invigorate and step into the heart space of who we are. Because there's been a bit of a line in the sand, I think, drawn here with indoctrinations keeping people in their head. Now, when you have the awareness of the structure and function of the mind, it's this beautiful tool that is purpose built to be conditioned, to be trained, to be stimulated, to jump around if it needs to hold focus if it needs to. It's got all these beautiful capacities, but it's a little bit like a puppy. You get a brand new puppy and you bring it home and you give it no love and attention. What's it going to do? It's going to chew socks, dig holes. It's not going to toilet train. It's going to leave its little surprises all over your house, things like that. But what happens if you give that puppy just a little bit of love and attention? Well, like every dog, you have a best friend for life, and your mind is actually your best friend for life. And who's the best friend of the mind is? Well, it's the heart space, because that's the master. And this is where, for me, these are just my own insights or sense of what really goes on in the psyche. This is where I feel innate knowing and wisdom resides. And if I really want to know something, or I feel like my mind's a little bit wayward, I come back in here. And it's interesting because people tell me like, "Oh, how do you reconnect more with your heart?" And well, one way is to do that. Like immediately when we put our hand on our heart, we feel whole being and our psyche shifts. It's a tangible shift that you feel. Your voice will change, your facial expression will change, and the nature of your thoughts will change. And when you're kind of in the ocean of life, yeah, like how do you become a complete surfer? Well, you don't become a complete surfer just because you ride Bell's Beach every day. That only breaks right-handed anyway. You want to surf lefts, it doesn't barrel much. You want to surf barrels. You want to surf shallower reefs. You want to surf sandbars. So to be a complete surfer, to master your life passion of surfing, you want to surf all the waves in all the oceans and challenge yourself because you're constantly getting put out of your comfort zone. Then when you get to Bells, your mastery's already risen because of all these other insights and skills you've learned. And so the ocean of life is the same. I'm not going to not go to that situation or move through that challenge that's been presented because it doesn't, I don't want to, or it's wrong. It's, hey, it's a wave. It's going to break on your head. You're going to have to deal with it anyway. So why don't you, take it on? And that way you're going to expand as a surfer in the ocean, or you're going to expand as a human in humanity and the world we currently live in. And at the moment it's pretty onshore and there's lots of pounding, dumping waves. I get it, but they're often the days that you grow. Like I play tennis with my nephews quite a bit, and they're teenagers. And when it's really windy or rainy or really hot and sunny, I'm kind of like, oh, these are the days that
Yeah, for sure.
the shots are going out. That we're kooking it because of there's a lot, but you stay focused, and then the shots start going in. And then those days where there's no wind, it's the right temperature, bang, 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 like it's things really flow very naturally and at a very high level, because you've gone through the challenges of breaking your board, getting washed on the rocks, or not being able to serve into the wind or whatever it's been.
I guess it's giving thanks, isn't it? Like, instead of looking at the world's problems, I guess, as something negative, but actually going, okay, this is our challenge. This is the next thing that we're going to face head on, and we're going to conquer it. And to be actually actively looking also in our personal lives for new challenges, to always be stretching ourselves. It doesn't matter whether it's a health challenge or, whether you're starting a new business or a new venture or something in your personal relationships. But, it's such a different shift in mindset when we're just going to a survivalist mode of getting through each day in life,
Yeah.
and to actually have a diary and to say, what do I actually want?
Yeah.
What challenges can I and do a bit of self-analysis, as you said. How do you know that you've made a certain goal? And it's quite interesting. I have a little to-do list and everything, and it's quite rewarding when you can cross certain things off your list and go, I actually did that the other year, and or challenges, because it's like you made a certain level of progress, yeah. Which I guess would be some certain tools that you'll be looking to give your clients. That's my child there getting ready. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I remember one job I had, and the manager was, some people would have called that person a workplace bully. And I remember my first kind of annual review with them that wasn't that pleasant, and I kind of felt like, well, I could move into the energy of most of the other people in the workplace that were just kind of in survival mode with this manager and all that kind of thing. Or, hang on, I'm a psychologist at the time. I was a psychologist, and one of the skills to be very good at in psychology is to work with and manage the experiences of working with difficult people. So you take out all the labels, bully, disparity, all that stuff. It's like, well, it's just a difficult human. And one of my skills to learn and get better at is to deal with manage that situation. And so I did. And, pretty soon, by the next year, it was fine. And what I was able to achieve and do with my PD budget and everything was, everyone was like, wow, how do you get to go and do that? Well, and I did it in a very respectful manner. It wasn't about trying to get it over that person. It was just about being clear who I am, and role modeling professional behavior,
Mommy,
and,
where's your
and,
water bottle?
and not allowing, not allowing inappropriate,
Fill it up.
you know.
Hi.
Sorry about that. So I've completely lost my place here.
So the situation that could have potentially been an adversity and a real stress for me in my work life in that workplace became an opportunity and an achievement to become a better psychologist, because I improved my skills at dealing with a very difficult person who actually did have a tangible power over me and my position in that setting. That wasn't going to change, because psychology, it didn't go into the hierarchy of management. It just went off in the profession of psychology, So.
I think they can operate in a lot of different spheres as well. I've had some various interactions in hospital that could have gone very, very south. But when you respond in a loving way, and when you can start to see someone else's perspective, and you stop potentially judging them for doing something to you, but you respond to them as a person, it's quite interesting how it flips when you realize that. When we started this conversation, we were talking about, people being at different spiritual ages, regardless of their particular age. And when you start to see people that way, that they're just at a different part of their journey in life, and you respond to them appropriately for that spiritual age that you determine them to be, it's amazing how they open up. As you said, if you give a puppy the right ingredients in life, it thrives. And when we respond in a way that is loving and kind, as well as keeping our own personal boundaries, it can result in some really staggering outcomes that we wouldn't predict otherwise.
And it starts here, which was, my boundaries. And that's, again, a self-care thing. It's not if I'm not going to, and you attack back, because that's what a war is. Someone attacks and you attack back. But it's very disarming for the, in this case, the workplace bully, when response is to not get into the war and not step into the pattern that they've established that the rest of the workplace is actually quite caught up in. It's very disarming. Now, it's interesting because then they don't know what to do. And so there's a bit of time. And when you conduct yourself with honor, they now feel safe that they can do what they want rather than repeat a pattern that's not going to work with me. Because it started with me going, well, I will not allow anyone to treat me in that manner in this space or any space, but not in an aggressive way, just in a clear way. And so how can I now achieve that with another human being who I have and I'm not trying to have any control with? Love and control don't exist in the same space. So if I try and control this person, well, now it's a war because they're trying to control me. I'll just come back with the same attack.
Yep.
So the only thing, I don't even control myself. This is another illusion. But I learn ways to be in command of oneself. And so it's subtle change, but these are the, when you get into the language and the subtleties of, like I shared earlier, it's not self-interest, it's self-care. That opens a whole other world of intention and action about whether I will or won't do something from a place of love, because it's self-care, not self-interest. And with people that we find challenging, whether they're in our community or whether they're in illusionary authority positions, when you come with your humanity and you can see theirs, it's very disarming. And one of the best things to do in competition in sport is, one of the best things to do is to make an error, because your opponent's not predicting error. So they're going to be out of place. But the point of that is do something that they're not predicting. And as long as it's coming from good sportsmanship or honourable behaviour, then it's going to set a different tone. And they're going to have to adjust to that without you trying to control them, because they're going to want to seek control again. So they're going to work ways to adjust, because their usual way doesn't work. So this is where you can have a very loving command of self and your thoughts, words, deeds in a relationship that will have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly powerful, what we're discussing here, because it has the potential to shift the whole of society's mindset into dealing with other people. Even the words we choose, I think sometimes they're quite, like you talked about, self-care and self-love, and how things are projected, like, divide and conquer. We're living in a world that has taught us rules of engagement with each other, like even how parents relate to children. Often, they've been passed down generationally, things like threats, discipline, ideas that have been conditioned into them of how do you control children, how their behavior. And to sort of move to a new model of how you see a child, how you perceive a child, how do you can encourage that child to grow into the fullness of themselves and develop risk taking in a safe way. But even that, it's like, how can risk taking be a safe way? It's not absolutely safe. It's a measured response. Again, back to the idea of common sense and intuition. But at some point, you have to allow that child and that person to develop that intuition.
Yeah, there has to be the unknown. And so going back to that little yarn I had about the flow state, a fundamental experience for flow to occur, for us to experience flow ourselves, is spontaneity. Now, if everything's controlled and measured and there's no risk and this kind of thing, well, where's spontaneity? Where's the whole beauty of comedy if there's no spontaneity? If you know the outcome, you know the punchline, it's not funny, So that's life, isn't it? Like, we want spontaneity. Think of the most beautiful moments we share with our partner or a loved one that's spontaneous, and it's because you or they wanted to give or craft this moment. not because they felt compelled or it's just, the mindless pattern that we have kind of thing. These are the things that stand out. And again, like that's your comfort zone inside. To go out is unknown. To go out is a risk. To expand oneself in all dimensions of your being, psychic, the whole way, well, that is about taking risks.
It's interesting what you're saying about spontaneity there, because the other day we were out and one of my daughters, she's 17, she said, oh, I've always imagined a day where we just jump on trams and trains and just see where we end up. Anyway, we just ended up jumping on a tram, and I realized that we weren't going to end up where we thought we were going to end up, and we had to navigate our way around it, and how that developed a lot of skills in terms of risk taking at that particular moment in time. And we had to change patterns and course, but often in life what happens is we have this schedule, right, and everything, like we're booked in to talk from X to a certain time, and there isn't often room left for this spontaneity, where, because if you're going to have a spontaneous day where you jump on trains and trams and see where you go, and at one stage we were thinking of catching a ferry across back, then how do you have that time to get out of that comfort zone? So there has to be times, I think, where when with children and with ourselves, we have days where nothing is scheduled, where we can have these spontaneous days, because I reckon it's kind of good for the brain to navigate a certain path, because that was quite unpredictable how things flowed in the end. And even though we did have Google Maps, it wasn't that very helpful. And then, of course, you just throw out Google Maps and see where you end up in life journey, which is where we're sort of heading, I guess, in this path right now that we're on. We're on uncharted waters, which makes people feel a little uncomfortable, I think. When we're using social media, we're using news outlets, government messaging, people are so used to, even like weather apps, they're used to having a level of predictability about life. And here you're talking about going out surfing and just being able to sense whether the next wave comes along. It's completely different from going to a structured world, which we believe is completely true. And most of the time it doesn't work out anyway, right? It doesn't, just because they tell you the weather's going to be a certain way, the majority of the time it doesn't work out that way. But we still go back to the weather app, right? Because we've been conditioned to go that way. But when you actually go into self, and we were out there in the storms, I think it was, October, and they're predicting 130 kilometre-hour winds to hit our campsite. And in the end, I remember sitting there at 4 a.m. in the morning, and my light went off as I headed towards the camp, and it was perfectly still, and just feeling this sense that, no, we're going to be fine. And nothing hit our campsite. Like, it was, we were told to evacuate, nothing. But it's interesting what, that intuition is so much more powerful. But if I had watched the news, if I'd listened to everyone else, we would have packed up and evacuated.
Yeah.
And yet, how powerful is that? How powerful is that ability to trust that inner knowing? Like, it sounds very woohoo, but it actually works like the majority of the time, because we're kind of connected in this energetic way to something that's far greater than ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an energy of nature, How come my apricot tree this season chose not to bear any fruit when in the last 8 seasons it's had a great yield? There's obviously, well, in my view, my sense is it's giving itself a rest, because there's something about the soil biome that needs to move in another way, whatever it is, for it to have the nutrient to then bear fruit next season. Everything in nature has its own
Cycle
and its own intuition, its own way of navigating the world around and the world within, I feel, So, yeah.
So anyway, I was going to wrap it up, because we've gone. This has been a great discussion. Is there anything you would like to add, Richy, that we haven't discussed today? I know that you've got your website, richybennett.org, which we'll put in the comments for people to access your various services. And So you've got your author of, and you've got the 2 books linked there as well. And does that link to, you don't have any social media, do you? You're not doing any social media at all?
No, I haven't got any. Yeah, I don't have any at the moment. Yeah.
So people can get in touch with you if they would like to.
Yeah, I have an email on my website, and yeah, that's a direct email to me, so I can yeah, I can respond to people that way, and yeah, that'd be great. Um, the way that I often spend time with people is I always have like a free no obligation yarn first, because people have to feel like you're someone that's got something that's of benefit, and that again intuitively there's that energy or sense of, you know, this man or this woman's got something to offer that's meaningful and might serve me. So that's how I always start with people, and if they choose to move on, then that's fine. If they choose to engage, then that's fine, you know. Yeah, so my website's pretty much all I have out there for people to but that seems to be enough. The web's still up and running, so
Yeah, you're a wealth of knowledge, and like both the esoteric and, you know, even the allopathic. You're very familiar with the whole spectrum of, you know, the whole mental health space to help people navigate through. Even as, I guess, even an advocate, I imagine, if anyone needs help in that way.
yeah, performance psychology just offers another path to do your inner work, including where, you know, you might have experienced some pretty significant adversity, because you know, I work with athletes that have had career-ending injuries, and you know, people have had career-ending injections, life ending.
Yeah.
So you know, there's a parallel to that, and you know, like I raised a couple of times during our yarn where like the head and the heart have been disconnected by a lot of the indoctrination, a lot of the messages we've had for decades and generations. You know, this is a 100+ year project, I think, that's been unfolded. But anyway, going back to one of my most loved destinations on the planet, Hawaii. One of my first season when I was there, obviously I was surfing as many of the waves as I could, but I really immersed in the culture, and or I'm always interested in the culture of whatever local place I visit. And they talk a lot about aloha and the aloha spirit. And the aloha spirit really is about mind and heart in harmony.
Mm.
And there's lots of really beautiful, the word aloha is actually 5 words, 5 Hawaiian words, and it's an acronym. So, for example, the H is ha'aha'a, which means humility. And the other words, you know, relate to things like patience and tenderness and that kind of stuff. And from that energy, the aloha energy of the heart space, that's what's guiding the mind, and the mind is the tool or in service of that, rather than it's been flipped or even disconnected in our modern or our current society. So as I shared before, if people want to connect a bit more with the essence of their being, their heart space, and explore what heartfulness is, because there's a lot out there about mindfulness, which is another beautiful gift if used wisely. The heartfulness is, yeah, it can be as simple as putting your hand on your heart or feeling that, and then just noticing how my mind moves. And when we're engaging in activities, allowing range for spontaneity, allowing range for risks that I feel ready to take. And that's an individual responsibility. That's not me saying, hey, go take risks. That's you do your inner work to know that I feel ready to take that risk. Because everyone thinks, when I used to be a sports psychologist, oh, you must motivate a lot of people, but I did a lot of work and still do mentor extreme athletes, people that do just incredible life-threatening performances. And I say I have never done motivation with those people in my life, because it's not my place. You got to want it from here, and I can give you some insights on how you can invigorate and expand your psyche to do it as safely and successfully as possible. But you got to want it, and that goes back to that choice thing we spoke about. You got to want to make that change, and a lot of times that's from pain, but that's okay. The point is you made the change. if, it,
Yes,
if
for
it's from
sure.
pace, wonderful. If it's a graceful path where you just chose, no, I'm going this way, that's great too. But when it comes from here and you really feel here, you know, I've got this one of the poems, 100 Dawns is a poetry book actually, and one of the poems is, which wave will I catch? How will I ride through? the confusion, the illusion. What would love do? If you're wanting to know some answers about navigating this and conditioning or de-indoctrinating this, come here, and that's your foundation and your reference point, and it does make the path a little easier.
I love what you said about aloha. I actually, because you sign all your messages with aloha, so now I can understand why you say that you're actually wishing that heart space, of yourself and giving of yourself in that email or the text message, and it is actually a beautiful word. I'll remember that now. I didn't know that was what it actually meant. But yeah, look, we're also interconnecting. I don't think you've signed up yet, but Health Alliance Australia has launched a new free community directory page where people can list their business listings up there. So
Yeah.
all part of, connecting people and services together and building that wider community that's on our website. So it'd be great if people signed up to that. And yeah, if you want to support our work, come to us, to our website. There's a donate link. Health Alliance Australia, join our free mailing list. Please share the link to this podcast, as it, I'm sure, will be widely censored as everything else. Thanks everyone for watching today. Thank you, Richy, for your time today. It was such a pleasure to have you and to talk to you, and for you to share your insights. And I know we could probably spend hours and hours and hours, because you have so many different and wonderful things to share with us.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, and thanks for all the wonderful work you do with HAA. It's just excellent.
It was great. It was great meeting you the other night too. And your dog. Okay, bye.
Thank you.